The Encyclopedia of the Jewish Religion on the word agent, which is the Hebrew shaliach, which means one sent. The main point of the Jewish law of agency is expressed in the dictum: a person's agent is regarded as the person himself, and the encyclopedia gives you there a Jewish commentary citation you can check out. Therefore, any act committed by a duly appointed agent is regarded as having been committed by the principal. So this is similar, I guess, today to your lawyer in court of a shaliach, an agent, and this person will act on your behalf. Whatever they say will be whatever you're saying. David, in Ezekiel 37, my servant David will be king over them, the redeemed Israel, when the kingdom comes on earth, and they will all have one shepherd. Okay, but then in Zechariah we read that Yahweh shall be king over the entire earth, and on that day he, that is God, Yahweh, will be one, and his name will be one. What turns out to be David as the one king over all, but obviously, ultimately, it will be God, Yahweh, because he's always behind the scenes, Yahweh supporting his chosen ones, his agents. And we have this interesting account of Joshua in Deuteronomy 31. It says, Yahweh your God is the one who will pass before you. But then it says that Joshua is the one who will pass before you. There's almost this blending, as we will see, this mixing of the principal and the agent. They're almost one and the same, but obviously not one and the same person, or not two persons in some mysterious one Yahweh or one God. In Joshua 24, verse 1, Joshua assembled all the tribes and they presented themselves before God. So that's interesting. So you have Joshua there as God. And then 1 Samuel 10, Samuel assembled Israel in verse 17. And then in verse 22, Israel asked Yahweh. The agent here is Samuel, but Israel treats Samuel as Yahweh, the one God of Israel himself. So the principle of agency is also used for humans to humans. So in Genesis 43 and 44, we have a story there of the steward of Joseph, who is sent by Joseph. And then this steward is identified as Joseph himself. So again, this principle of agency is used even among humans. As I said before, like today, you can use another human, another person to be your shaliach, be your representative, be the one you sent. In Luke 7, the servants of the centurion are described as the centurion himself. So this is in Luke 7. And you see it here. The centurion sent friends to say to him, that is Jesus, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. Then the man who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. So it starts out, this account, with the centurion, one individual, one person, speaking to Jesus. But then actually, the one who has been speaking to Jesus, or the ones, are men, are the servants of the centurion in verse 10. A similar issue with the so-called prophetic language. Let's look at this passage here in Zechariah 2, verse 9, using the NIV version. I will surely raise my hand against them so that their slaves will plunder them. Then you will know that the Lord, that is Yahweh Almighty, has sent me. It's interesting, though, that in other translations, like the NET Bible, they understand what's going on here because they put clear quote marks. For example, I am about to punish them in such a way, he says, so that's the prophet in yellow. So the prophet Zechariah speaking for God, but the translators here, to make it clear what's going on in the passage, add the quote marks. And then again, quote, that they will be looted by their own slaves. Now this is again God, the Lord God speaking. And then they close the quote marks, as you see there, the NET. And then you will know that the Lord Yahweh, who rules over all, has sent me. So they're trying to help us here, the translators, by adding the quote marks. We know that in the original text, there are no quote marks. But sometimes this is needed to help the reader out so there's no confusion. But unfortunately, many are trying to read into this that there are more than one Yahweh, more than one Lord Almighty. This is a good comment from the IVP Bible background commentary on John 5:30. Jesus is thus a faithful shaliach, or agent, again, one who is sent. Jewish law taught that the man's agent was as a man himself, backed by his full authority, as we read in the Jewish Encyclopedia, to the extent that the agent faithfully represented him that is the principal, in this case, the Lord God, the Father. The commentary notes that Moses and the Old Testament prophets were sometimes viewed as God's agents, as we just saw, right? All those examples I gave you with Samuel and Joshua, and Moses obviously was a prophet. What's interesting is that when it comes to Moses, 4 of the 10 plagues set on Egypt by God were actually performed by his brother Aaron. And the other interesting thing, as we saw, was that Old Testament prophets oftentimes speak for God in the first person. Another commentary here from the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament on the word apostolos, which is, by the way, the equivalent for the Hebrew shaliach. In Hebrews 3:1, Jesus himself is called an apostle. It is best explained by the later Jewish shaliach, that in the Son there speaks and acts God himself.